Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Sing Confidently Live Creatively podcast. Estelle here. I usually don't do intros to my guests, but today I wanted to make sure that you knew that this conversation with Alli Mae Carnes is not to be missed. You're going to learn how you can actually become a performing artist and performing arts entrepreneur full time if you'd like to, even if you don't have a theater degree. Okay. Alli shares her story of how she did not have a music or theater degree, but she still was able to build her career and build her passion for the performing arts and now teaches other people to do the same. She actually teaches kids and teenagers in Raleigh, North Carolina and online. So you guys check out the Alli Mae Carnes website because the studio is amazing. She helps so many kids and teens develop their voice and develop in dance and develop in acting, and to know that they are able to use their voices with confidence. And she talks about how you can do the same thing. You can learn how to build confidence as a singer and a performer. So I want you to really listen in. If you have any kids or teenagers who would love to start singing, you can definitely check out her studio as well. And if you are ready to take action yourself and you know that you want to build confidence as a singer and you want to do that with me, you guys know I have the Sing Confidently course available for you. It's a place where you can actually begin taking action steps in maybe a limited time that you have right now in your season of life. Take action in small ways. That's what I help you to do in the course so that you don't spend all your time searching for this, searching for that, trying to figure out how to do this, how to do that. But no, I give it all to you in this course, 4-step process to begin singing with confidence. And I'm there coaching you, and you get community as well. So make sure you go to creativelybyestelle.com/course. I invite you to go over there, check it out, and see if you are ready to take that action step with me as your coach. But make sure that you really listen into today's episode and realize and soak in the fact that this is possible for you. You are able to become a theater artist, a singer, a performer with confidence, whether as a hobby, whether as a professional. You're able to start, and you can start today, and it is possible. I want you to just soak that in and take action after today's episode. All right, that's all. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Alli. I can't wait for you to listen. Yay, I'm here with the Alli Mae Carnes of the Alli Mae Carnes Studio. How are you doing today?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited that we're doing this. So for everyone who doesn't know you, I'm just gonna let you guys know I met Alli actually through, I think I first found out about you through Instagram. Like, I don't know. I was looking for studios in the North Carolina area to, apply to. And I was like, this girl looks so cool. This studio looks so fun. It's so colorful. It's so joyful. I was like, this looks like a great work environment. And like the students seem so excited. And so that's how I think I reached out to you via email. I don't think it was via DM or anything, but I was like, this looks really cool. And all my expectations were met and surpassed. It's been so fun working with you. And yeah, you're just so cool. And I want you to tell everyone more about you, who you are as a person and an artist. And we'll get kind of into your story a little bit.
So like Estelle said, my name is Alli Mae Carnes, and I am the owner and founder of the Alli Mae Carnes Studio. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I run my studio, but also professionally act and sing and dance and choreograph in local productions, either for high schools or for different professional or community theaters. That's
Yeah.
basically it in a short.
Good bio, good synopsis. So we're gonna get into it. So I always like to like take us back because it's all about the journey, I think, and I know that you're still on your journey. We all are, but like when did you first encounter singing, theater, music, from the best of your memory? And then like how did that grow into now you having your own studio and performing professionally?
Okay, so I actually started out as a dancer.
Mhm.
I pretty much like came out of the womb wanting to perform, and the dance studio in my town where I grew up in Florida, you had to be 3 years old to take dance lessons. So the day after I turned 3 years old, I was in dance class, and so that's where it really all began. I fell in love with being on stage. I loved performing. I loved dancing. I loved just everything about it. And when I was about 5 years old, I started doing competitive dance. And if you watch videos of me at competition with my dance team, I was like, I always knew all the choreography. I always knew everything. And I was always just hamming it up there. And so when I was about 5 years old, my dance teacher went to my parents and said, you should put her in voice lessons because she's like really magnetic on stage, and it will only help her if she does decide to do this as a career. It will only help her improve like as a performer. And so my parents put me in voice lessons when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I was kind of scared to sing in front of audiences, which is so weird because I like had no stage fright when it came to dance. And so, yeah, I took voice lessons for about gosh, who knows, time, like maybe a year. And then my parents decided, like, because I was also doing cheerleading, I was doing more and more competitive dance, and still like very heavily involved in school stuff. And so my parents were like, okay, well, maybe once she hits puberty and goes through like more voice change, then we'll put her back into voice. And the only theater program in my town was really, or really any like singing or theater in my town was really the high school theater program. And so I went through middle school mainly just doing cheerleading and dance. And then I got to high school and started doing theater. And so I hadn't really done a lot of singing since I was little, but I would sing at like church and stuff.
Right.
And yeah, that's when I fell in love with theater specifically. I actually didn't do my first theater production until I was in high school. And I fell in love with it because I was able to sing and dance at the same time, and like the acting and the character. Because up until that point, I really loved doing solos at dance competition that were musical theater. So like I just like the really expressive ones, I would get really high scores on the things that were like the funnier I could be, the higher I would score. And so I really enjoyed like character work and things like that. But yeah, started doing shows in high school and fell in love with it. I remember my first show. Up until this point, I was like, I want to be a doctor. I just enjoy theater. I enjoy performing, but I don't want to do it as a career. And was just convinced that I was going to be a doctor. And after I did my first show, I came home and told my parents during tech week. My dad said, so how's the show going? And I decided to drop the bomb on my parents right then and there that, you know what, I actually am loving this so much that I think I want to go to college for this. And and my mom, who is a teacher, was like, oh, like just parents worry about like the sustainability of that career and the reliability of that career. And they were like, it's not that we don't think you can do it. It's just, it's hard. So long story short, did not go to school for theater, and went to school for pre-med at first and then hated that. And so changed my
Can't
major.
say I don't relate.
Yeah. I was like, I hate chemistry. What was I thinking? Like, this is so boring. And yeah, so then I changed my major to counseling. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed like the working with people aspect, which I had always loved. And really, I in college started to lose a lot of myself. I felt like just those parts of my life were over and that I could never have it back. And so I would go and see theater productions in college at my school, and I would just sob afterwards because I was just like, oh, I miss it so much. It was too painful to even go and see musicals because it just was a reminder of something I couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
And it just, in my mind, it was like, well, you're grown up now. You have to grow up and like you can't do these things anymore. Which was silly, but it's how I felt. And so anyway, graduated when I was 20 years old with a degree in counseling. And I did a lot of work as a therapist in multiple capacities. I worked for a program at the time called Therapeutic Day Treatment, where I was in low-income areas in schools, working with students who were had were on like either through the foster care system or had like insurance through the government, things like that. And I did group therapy with these students, and then I also was assigned certain clients to like go to their classrooms and like
Yeah.
observe their behavior and implement techniques to help them improve in school and set them up for success and give them like that one-on-one attention that they needed. Um, and so I did that for a little bit, and then I also was an applied behavior analysis therapist, which they call like a certified behavior technician.
Yeah.
So I did that for a little bit. And I really, again, enjoyed it, but there was still something missing. I really did not have a creative outlet. I was going through a point in my life where I was like, I'm not talented. I'm not good at
Mm.
anything. And I remember like just being like, I see all these people who, were just doing all these amazing things. And in terms of like, I had friends that were doing theater, I had friends that were musicians, and I was like, gosh, I'm not good at anything. I'm not good at anything. And I remember someone saying, well, you're good with people. And I was like, yeah, but like, I'm not good at any of that. And I wish I was. And yeah. And so I went through a really hard time in my life the year after college, and I was calling my dad to like kind of vent about some things going on. And my dad said to me, I don't know what this looks like for you or what this means specifically, but I think that you've just been putting so much time into other people and into your relationships and taking care of others that you have not done something for yourself. Is there anything that you can do just for yourself, like that doesn't serve anyone else?
Mm.
And long story short, found an audition for Legally Blonde. And it was, I'd only lived in North Carolina for a month. And I went and auditioned, didn't know a single soul, and got cast. And it was a blast. And I met so many amazing friends. And, then that gave me the confidence to go and audition for things, around Raleigh, got cast in some really like high caliber productions, really formed a community for the first time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am good at this. I am good at this. I can do this. I am an artist. And that's kind of how it all began. So then I started, performing a lot, and I was working a full-time job, and I left my full-time job in October of 2019 to pursue acting, like do freelance work full time. And
Wow.
that was going really, really well until the panini was pressed in March
Yeah.
2020. And yeah, and so I went from like having my whole calendar filled out for 2020, 2021, to losing all my jobs within the first
Dang.
few weeks of the pandemic. Um, and from there, I was like, okay, I've just lost all my jobs. What am I going to do? And I created this 6-week course called Triple Threat, and for middle schoolers specifically. And it was 2 weeks of acting, 2 weeks of dance, 2 weeks of singing. And it was on this online platform. And basically, because we were all in lockdown,
Yeah.
kids from all over the world took the class.
That's so
And
cool.
I was like, what is happening? It just blew up. And I would do like 10 students per section, and like another class would fill up. I'd open another section, that one would fill up. Long story short, I did that for a few months. And when one of the classes ended in like July 2020, so I'd done this from like March to July, when one class ended, a student said to me, can you teach me privately? And I was like, oh, I have never thought about, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking, I've never thought about that, but I guess I could, So
Yeah.
I started teaching the student privately, and it changed my life because
Yeah.
I fell in love with it. I fell in love with like the connections that you get to make one-on-one when you're doing private lessons, but also just like sharing my love of performing with the student, and like getting to pass down like the things, suddenly everything I had experienced felt like it wasn't in vain anymore. It felt like, well,
Yeah.
if someone could benefit from, like, even if it's a horrible audition story, or whatever. And so I fell in love with it. And then there were times where she'd have a question and I'd be like, you know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to get back to you. And
Hmm.
I would research it, and
Research it. Yeah.
I fell in love with the learning more, in the professional development, and how, like, I just could not get enough. And I was like,
Yeah.
I cannot learn enough about this. I love it so much. And so that's when how I really fell um
Yeah.
into teaching voice. And
Yeah.
from there it just, I finally decided I didn't want to have a wait list anymore, and that I was tired of sending potential students to other people in Raleigh, when, like, we could cultivate a community here. And I hired one of my good friends that I had worked on a musical with in 20, actually, like, opened March 1st, or closed March 1st, 2020. And she was a high school chorus teacher and was looking to leave education, and I brought her on, and the rest is history.
Yay. Okay, I haven't heard the whole story. So that was really fun for me to hear. And also like there's so many points in your story where you kind of had to like make a choice, or you kind of had to like you confronted something. And I think that's so relatable to a lot of artists, to anyone really, but especially people who are like maybe listening to this, who are coming back to singing, or who are wanting to come back to singing. They feel they have that same feeling that you had after college, where you were just like, I felt like you felt like something was missing, or like you weren't like you weren't really, you didn't have like your own thing, like you didn't
Mm-hmm.
have your thing. You didn't have that thing that was like that felt really purposeful and artistic. And for those of us who have creative souls, who are like just feel drawn to the stage or to singing or performing and creating in some way, it's like when you're not doing that for a portion of time, like intentionally, you feel so lost. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if lost
Yeah.
is the best word, but you just feel off. Like it just feels weird. And I know like there are so many points in your story that I relate to a lot, and people listening who have heard my episodes where I share my story and stuff like that, and other episodes, I also had my journey of pre-med, and then like feeling like also going to shows and like joining, choir and all that stuff, but still wanting more, and like all these things. And then after college, feeling so torn between, oh, do I continue on this path of medicine, or do I really like dive in to performing? And I love that you kind of were like in between of like counseling. I did the same thing. I studied psychology, and I was like really considering doing my master's in psychology. So it's like there are just a lot of related moments, but a lot of it, there are a lot of times where you had to kind of confront, like, okay, who do I really want to be? What is missing here? And then how do I move forward? And I love that you kind of like had the moment with your dad where you're like, okay, do something that you enjoy for yourself. And that's a great place, I think, for people to start, is like, if you're feeling that like something's missing, like lean into like, oh, what would I love to do? What did I love to do when I was younger is always a great
Mm-hmm.
question. And what do I like, how can I incorporate that back into my life in a small way and just start from there? So you did that with an audition, which is great. So I love that. When it comes to like, so in this whole journey, you talked about like you did your first audition, you did your first performance, that kind of gave you the confidence to do more and eventually do acting full time, which I didn't know that you did that for a portion of time. So if someone's like just coming back to this, or they're starting to sing, they're wanting to maybe do voice lessons or something, but they don't feel confident yet, like how do they build that confidence to even start to go to an audition or to take a voice lesson? What are some stories that they can rewrite in their minds, do you think, or like ways that they can kind of, convince themselves to take that step of action and build confidence over time?
Right. Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh, that first audition, I was not confident at all. At all. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so it's more about, like, I try to be less product focused, which is so
Mhm.
hard, or less like outcome oriented and more
Yeah.
like, because I can't control those things. What I and like I this is what I tell my students all the time. Like when they're nervous about an audition, I'm like, valid, right? You're nervous
Right.
because you care, right? You're and so let's focus on the things we can control. What can we control? How much we prepare, how how we talk to ourselves. We can control
Yeah.
that. We can control our demeanor in the room, our energy.
Yeah.
We can control that. We can control how like easy we are to work with, things like that. And so we can like and so what I did, I started at that first audition and I did it for a very long time. After every audition I would journal how I felt like it went before I knew the outcome, because
Yeah.
it's easy to be like, oh, I feel so good about that, and then you don't get the role and then you're like, oh, why do I suck? And and so if I didn't get that role, I would go back and look and be like, oh, like I actually felt pretty good about this before I knew the outcome.
Yeah.
Setting goals for myself of like, this does not need to be a perfect audition. I just got to show up. I just got to show up. That was the goal for me for a while, because I was so anxious and it took so much out of me. And so rather than it being like, I'm not gonna get this, I'm not gonna do well, I'm not ready. I mean, I hadn't sung in 5 years, or let's see, I guess 4 years. I hadn't sung in 4 years when I went to that
Yeah.
audition. And when I say I hadn't sung, this not even in my car, really, like nothing. And
Wow.
so I I was not ready to be like going and singing. And this was an audition that I had to sing in front of like the whole everybody auditioning. This was not like just in front of like two people.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was terrifying because everybody knew each other. But I will say, like, I told myself, just go, because if it's always going to be, well, I'm not going to get that, or I'm not going to get the role I want, or whatever, um, then why go audition for anything? Because like, because you've already, whether you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
really telling yourself it's not about the outcome. If I get the role, great. If I get cast, great. But it's not about that. It is about, one, I get the opportunity to perform today. And that's what I love to do, right? So I get to do that for these 32 bars, telling
Oh,
myself like I love to perform. So yes, I'm nervous, but I get to perform today. How exciting. And also just like you learn something from every audition. So you like it, let it be about what can I learn from this, rather than like I have to get cast, or I have to, whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful,
mm,
right? And so and you're gonna learn and you're gonna improve each time. So even seeing it as like, all right, that's one more closer to that perfect audition. There's and so
yeah.
that's really how I tried to view things, especially because when I was doing this full time, I was like, oh my god, I do not want to go to that audition. Like I'm not gonna get it. I know I'm not gonna get it. And I've been there, but I'm like, no, I have to do it, even if it's just because your your belief about yourself
Yeah.
is so important. Even down to like when I'm working out and I am trying to push through and I'm like, and I quit on myself, that adds to like my story about myself of like, yeah, I always quit when things get hard.
Mm,
Or yeah, I don't like when things are really scary, I back out, or whatever. And so your story about yourself really matters. So trying to build that positive story about yourself, that positive outlook on yourself.
yeah. I like that. That's a good answer. I feel like that was like a three-prong approach. So like first of all, how are you like gonna, what are you gonna say to yourself in regards to not focusing on the outcome, but on the process and what you get from it? And then also talking about what are you going to learn out of this? How are you going to grow? And it's giving you the opportunity to practice as well. I love that. That's so good. Very good. Okay, so but then I'm thinking about your story and I'm like, okay, so then it just took that you started at that one audition, you built your confidence over time, you started performing then around town, like locally. So a lot of people maybe listening aren't necessarily in New York City or aren't necessarily in LA or even Chicago or even Florida, like where there are like a lot of maybe a bunch of theater opportunities in their city, but they can still get involved in local theater or like they can still find ways to perform, to gig, and stuff like that. What would you recommend for anyone who's wanting to start gigging, wanting to start performing more locally, even for like beginner level, and then like building up that like theater community, that professional community, if they're wanting to do this then professionally as well?
Yeah, that was super hard for me because when I first moved here, there are so many theaters in Raleigh, and I was like, I don't know anything, like, and
Yeah.
so, I, what I did personally is one, Facebook groups. See if there are Facebook groups. If you're in Raleigh, Triangle Auditions, it's
Yeah.
perfect place to be in terms of like keeping yourself in the know. Two, Google like the company, if you're a theater person, like Google theater companies in your area. And I personally I reached out to those artistic directors via email
Mm.
because I moved here after a lot of season auditions, and I said, "Hi, I just moved here. I am looking to, I love to perform. I'm looking to audition certain places. I see you already had your season auditions. Is it too late? Like, could I come in?" And some artistic directors took me up on that, and I went in for a
Yeah.
special audition after they had already. And one artistic director was like, "I've already cast the whole season, but go ahead and come in, and I'm gonna keep you in mind for future things."
Right.
Just things like that. So I was huge into networking when I first moved here. And it's like by sending those emails, I would friend people on Facebook and I would message them and be like, "Can you get coffee? Like, I'd love to learn more about the theater community." And that's what I did. I met with one person and I said, "Tell me everything you know about the theater community here." And I took notes and I would just continue to, put myself out there,
Yeah.
and connect. And it becomes such a tight knit community. And it's like you do one show and you meet people, and then you go to the next audition and you're like, "Oh, wait, the last audition I did, I didn't know anyone. This audition, I knew like two or three people." And it just continues to snowball because it is a really tight knit community. And then eventually, a lot of people like to cast things or do different things based on just word of mouth. So
Yeah.
someone be like, "Do you know someone who would be interested in this?" Like, "Oh, I know the perfect person." So that's what I did, is just really like use social media, like reach out to people and just be like, "You want to grab coffee? I'm new to the area and I'm really looking to connect with people."
Yeah.
And just putting yourself out there and branching out.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for that. I'm taking mental notes because I'm also trying to figure out how to do that, which, I've already talked to you about this a bit, but I think like anyone who, is wanting to just start and get started, a lot of people aren't in the big cities where it's like, okay, like there are auditions and all this stuff,
Right.
but there are like so many opportunities, especially in the US, like locally for you to get engaged. And that's a great idea of like networking, going online, using social media, reaching out and just putting yourself out there. Like as you're talking, I just realized, like, I just thought to myself, you have such a drive about you that I think is really, really admirable and has like helped you so much. And I know that you then like instill that in your students when it comes to singing, like to not kind of, give up on themselves and on their goals, but to keep going and to do what it takes to get there. So when you first come, have a student come in and like say they're a beginner singer or they've done acting, dance before, performing a little bit, but maybe they're kind of new to using their voice, or they have sung before, acted before, but they need to work on like their performance skills, their stage presence, and things like that. Um, how do you kind of get them like to just like get out of their shell a little bit? And like, what are those like first couple of tips or steps that you would take a student through to kind of just help them, I don't know, build that confidence a little bit more in themselves and in their voice, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I work with mainly teenagers. I know all too well how to work with people that are having issues coming out of their shell. So I start every first lesson with just like getting to know the person,
Mhm.
because I'll say, like, "I realize singing is a very vulnerable thing and you don't know me." Like, so I understand
Yeah.
why you might be like, "What? Like, I don't want to do that. That's a little scary." Um, and so like I just call the elephant in the room. Like, I realize this is a scary thing. And I,
Yeah.
I, I know I can totally understand. Sometimes I'll even say like, "Oh my gosh, my first voice lesson back after college, Oh, I was terrified. I was
Yeah.
so scared. And so like I totally get it. And like thank you for like you did a brave thing today just showing up here and like
Mhm.
good on you, you know. That's kind of how I always start out, and then just like getting to talk with them about their goals. I ask them about their experience, things like that, that get them to loosen up a little bit too, so that we're not like
Yeah.
right into singing. Um, like more, and I'll tell them a little bit about myself, you know, and
Yeah.
crack some jokes and stuff to get them a little bit more like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them, especially on the first lesson, I'll say, all right, so this first lesson, I will give you like some feedback. I said, but for these first warm ups, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to give you any feedback. I'm just going to take notes on what I'm hearing, and
Hmm.
then we'll talk about it. And I said, so no like needing to get it right, nothing like that. Like I just want to listen to you. And so we'll do some warm ups and I'll take notes, and then um once we finish the warm ups, I'll say, okay, here's what I heard. You know, this was really, really great. What I'd like to work on is this, you know. And so, um, kind of working them up to that is great, but
Yeah.
also like getting in their head, like these warm ups do not need to be perfect. Like I really just need to hear your voice. I think kind of takes the pressure off too, so that it
Yeah.
doesn't feel so formal. Um, and I mean, I tell all of my students all semester, like I want to meet you where you are in your journey as an artist. And so, for me, you know, for our semester end showcases and stuff, you're going to see some students up there and it took everything in them to get on stage. And that's okay because they did it, and they may be singing like this looking at their words the whole time, and that's okay because their goal was to get
Yeah.
on stage and do it.
Yeah.
Other kids, they're past that. You know, they are at a different point in their journey. And so for me, just like to get them to come out of their shell is to like set those little goals along the way, whether it's, you know, sing, can you like sing this phrase with me if they're nervous
Mhm.
to sing it by themselves?
Yeah.
Sing this with me. Great. We do that 3 times. And then like, great, now do it without me. Go. I'm here if you need it. You know, I say that a lot. I'm like, I'm here if you need it. If you get nervous, I'll be here. I'll jump right in. But like, try it and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Trying to explore in lessons, it's more about exploration and curiosity. Like, what happens if you did this? Let's see what happens. That's kind of how I try to approach things.
I love that. Okay, I like that. I liked that question and that answer because a lot of people don't know what to expect when they first get to a voice lesson and how it's going to feel. And all they're feeling is like, I don't know if I want to sing in front of someone. And so, like, there's a lot of voice teachers will try to give you that comfortable atmosphere. So I don't want people to feel like nervous to like start singing again or like get into voice lessons because like it's not about perfection. Definitely not on the first day at all, but ever really. It's not about perfection. And so I'm glad that you were able to kind of describe that so people kind of know that this is what's available for you when you step into putting yourself out there and singing and taking voice lessons. So, kind of switching gears, I want to just ask a quick technical question before we wrap up because you teach a lot of musical theater students, especially like high school age. And one of the things that I hear and see a lot, like, and you see this a lot on the internet too, is like belting and like how do you belt versus mixing and how can I belt and like a lot like even me as a teenager I thought that I had to have this like big belt which my voice didn't naturally like do that and I didn't understand like the stylistic aspect of mixing versus belting and how to do that. So give us like a little rundown like if you were like working with a beginner singer or like a high school singer and they didn't really know about mixing and belting and how to start developing that technique because it is a technique and a style and how to begin developing that. What are like a couple first steps that you would give them? Just right
Yeah.
off the bat, I'm asking you like I know that's like it's a bit of a specific question, but you
Yes.
know,
It is a process.
it's a process.
So I'll start by saying I have had a teacher at Boston Conservatory named Kevin Wilson. Shout out to Kevin. He is now at Oklahoma City. Kevin would always say, we as humans already know how to belt. It's already in us. So he would always use the example of during COVID when people were in Costco fighting over toilet paper, people were belting,
Yeah.
right? They were, ah! hey, and that always made me laugh because it's true. Like, we have that in us. It is more of what, like, the mind that actually gets in the way of, like, am I doing this right? Am I going to hurt myself? Oh my gosh. So I'll just add that caveat in there is we all know how to do it. It's about, like, letting ourselves experience that and
Mhm.
letting go. And so what I try to do is, because sometimes with singing, it's associated with, like, I have to sound beautiful. A lot of the times belting is not
Yeah.
gorgeous. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Like, it sounds good, but it's not like, oh my gosh, that was so beautiful, right? It's
Not like
and
not like a riff, like a riff in like head voice, like you think of like Mariah Carey or something like that. Like, oh
right.
wow, it's so gorgeous, but like a belt is like doesn't have that same quality. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially musical theater belt where it's like,
Yeah.
ah! you know. So I'm like, wow, I could fall asleep to that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, um, so just like again, this going back to the curiosity and exploration part is I do a lot of speech stuff, and
I'm not
so
quite sure
oh,
how to help you with that.
sorry, my Alexa is
Oh,
talking.
that's okay.
Um, anyway, and so I do a lot of like that's mine with students or like
Yeah.
mom, hey mom, whatever they connect to. And we're so silly with it, so I'll do it first. I'll make them repeat after me, and we just get sillier and sillier with it. But there's no such thing as a magic exercise, but if there were, it would be this. So that's mine. I cannot remember who came up with that exercise, but I learned this from Dr. Kari Reagan, who is my voice teacher and mentor. And we added in, because of the th in that,
Hmm.
sometimes it can create a lot of air for students who are having difficulty with cord closure. So we do Batman, that's mine, which is, so we'll do it like in a third. So I'm just going to start with C and E.
Hmm.
So going like, Batman, that's mine, and keeping it very, very speechy and just throwing it out. So like, Batman, that's mine, and
Hmm.
trying, and even giving them, like, especially as an actor, I give them like a directive, like, say, imagine Batman just like took something from you and you're mad and you're like, hey, that's mine. Because tapping into those things that we already know how to do, you know how to call, well, what's interesting actually is in social media, and something that I've talked to a lot of voice teachers about is 20, 30 years ago, voice teachers didn't have to teach students how to call out,
Hmm.
hey, taxi,
Yeah.
things like that. Now we do, because you don't do a lot of that anymore. If you need to
Yeah.
call to someone, like, you'll call them on the phone. So teaching them those, it's in there. It's in there. Sometimes they just got to get used. They got to tap into it. But exploring that through speech is where I normally start with
Oh,
students.
I love that. That's so good. I've definitely stolen that exercise since since shadowing your lesson that one time. Because it's so good. It's actually really, really helpful. So you guys take note of that exercise and do that if you want to work on your belt. Just thinking about the person who's listening who is wanting to start singing, performing again, maybe as a creative outlet, or maybe they want to pursue it professionally, but they just have this like I'm not enough, unworthiness, lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, all of that kind of coming up, and maybe they just don't even know where to begin, or they're feeling overwhelmed. So if you could just give them one piece of encouragement, of all the encouragement that you can think of from your own experience and all of that, but just like one piece of encouragement to encourage them to bring out the artist within them, to explore, to be creative, to start building that confidence, whatever comes to your heart that you would just want to bless them with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to something I was saying earlier, but it's like, prove to yourself you can do this, because you can do it. You can do it. And the thoughts you have about yourself manifest through your life. And so if you feel like you can't do it, just try it. Let's explore it. I'm a big curiosity over fear kind of person. So if I'm afraid to go to an audition, or I'm afraid to go try voice lessons, or I'm afraid to do these things, try to reframe that and think like, I wonder what would happen if. That's it. And try to explore things through curiosity rather than fear. And so, I mean, easier said than done. I've been there, but I felt like, and it's so funny, it makes me laugh now. I was 22 years old and felt like it was too late for me.
Mm.
I thought I was too old. And I really, what made me, bite the bullet is say, I'm going to turn 25, 30,
Yeah.
35, whether or not I do this.
Yeah.
Right? So might as well do it happy, might as well do it with, you know, live my one precious, beautiful life, So I would say, yeah, just explore options through curiosity and just go for it. Believe in yourself. Surround yourself with people who believe in you on your hard days, because you'll have them. But surround yourself with people who support that dream too.
Yeah, that's so good. Explore curiosity over fear. I love that. The There are so many good nuggets and points in this interview. You guys go back and re-listen. But tell everyone where they can find you so they can support you, learn more about the studio, work with you, all the things.
Yeah, best way is probably my website, allimaecarnes.com, ALLIMAECARNES.com. You can also find me on social media you can my personal Instagram, Alli Mae Carnes, or you can look up the studio at the Alli Mae Carnes Studio on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook.
Yeah. And everything will be in the show notes below. So you guys go visit Alli and check out all that she has to offer, all of her cute posts and reels and everything with all the students. And thank you so much for being on, Alli. I really appreciate it. I really was inspired myself, and I hope and pray that everyone who's listening is inspired too. And I know that they will be. You're amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and to this show. I'm so in awe of you for being here and showing up for your creative gifts. That takes courage. Don't forget to join the performing arts community on Facebook for support and inspiration as you continue on your journey. If this episode helped or inspired you in any way, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and share it with someone. It means so much. Thank you again, and don't forget to keep singing, acting, dancing, performing, and living creatively. Talk to you next time.